Mommy, am I gonna die? Oh no, baby, you're not gonna die. They are. Cover your ears. Hey, should we get a dog? My name is Kevin. This is Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we celebrate our favorite films. And we got a good one for you guys. We've got the Long Kiss Goodnight. This is our holiday pick, and I'll explain that in just a moment. Thank you again for joining us here. And as always, I'd like to, of course, bring my co-host here. I'm going to start with the queen of movie foo, Lacey Adderhold. Welcome to the show. How are you? Look at that. You got your Blu-ray copy as well.
Very exciting. Yes. I'm very excited to be awake at this early morning on Saturday.
Good to have you. Now, before we go on, we got to get our other co-host here. Of course, my brother from another mother, the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's going on, buddy?
Well, I can't be a podcaster. I'm a member of the PTA, damn it.
Good to have you, Kyle. Of course, we are celebrating, of course, the Long Kiss Goodnight. I've got both my original DVD here, and my newly acquired Blu-ray of the Long Kiss Goodnight. And Lacey, you've got your little combo pack there, custom-made combo pack. I like that.
Yeah, I decided that it was just time to stop all my Blu-ray DVDs that I had upgraded to Blu-ray. I went ahead and just bought a bunch of double cases and just consolidated because
that's what I need to do. And I'm glad you brought that up because there's two things I want to add.
As you can see, I have a problem with
media.
That is not a problem. That's a solution. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, yeah, no, I mean, now I've actually got some holes where I can actually add more to it, but it was full.
Well, I want to bring that up actually, because as you and I are both, and like with Kyle, we're cinephiles. We love films. That's why we do talk a lot about films here on the Fandom Podcast Network. But Lacey, you and I are also huge physical media collectors. As if you're watching the video, you can see yours in the back and mine's behind me as well. But what we like to do is we like to kind of consolidate stuff and upgrade to the Blu-ray. But we also like to keep the DVD just in case, because sometimes the DVD might have stuff that the Blu-ray doesn't. So like you said, you bought some empty Blu-ray double cases and stuff like that. And I'm going to do the same. Sometimes I'll just put the DVD, if I don't have the extra, double Blu-ray, I'll put the DVD in like a little envelope and stuff it inside the Blu-ray and stuff. But I'm glad that you do that, because I do that as well. I'm going to be calling stuff. But Kyle, I know you got some thoughts about this.
Well, I live in an apartment, so I have space consideration too. But Kevin, I've got to ask you, and especially in the case of the Long Kiss Goodnight, it's got that classic original DVD case that we all loved so much.
In case you can't tell if you're watching or listening, that is sarcasm by Kyle 101. These good old like paper cardboard. Yes, I'm opening mine up here, of the old blue DVDs that would come in that cardboard case that kind of pops open. And then if you notice too, some of them have little proof of purchases down the inner spine here. And back in the day, in some cases, if you pulled out these proof of purchases, you can send them in and get like free DVDs and stuff like that. And I did that a couple of times. Mine's actually missing a couple here. I don't remember if I did that with this one or not, but yeah. But I do digital. So does Lacey and Kyle.
Yeah.
You're the digital guy, but Lacey, yeah.
Those cases started with New Line Cinema.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
They were like, we're going to go nuts. We're going to go a different way. And we're going to mess up. Every person who wants to file something right after this movie is going to have to push it in and then pull the other one out and then push that one in and then push this one in later, because the little lip on that prevents
right here. Yes.
movie in the wall.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I hated that, and I still do.
And if you pushed it too fast and weren't paying attention, it would actually like pop open like behind the other DVD. So then when you decided to pull it out, it would pull both out, and then DVDs would go flying.
So there's two movies. There's two movies that come to mind that are hard. I got to go elsewhere, like overseas, to get like normal Blu-ray versions of them. Was Pump Up the Volume had this style case as well, and Young Guns 2 as well. I had to go overseas to get copies of Blu-rays of Young Guns 2, because here in the States they didn't release an updated version of these. So
they have an updated version now.
Yeah.
For both of those. For me, it was Final Destination and the original Blade.
Yeah, that's right. Blade
was like another one.
Which one?
Twister.
Oh, yep. I had the old Twister. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the Long Kiss Goodnight here, of course, here on the Fandom Podcast Network, guys, and Couch Potato Theater. But we got to bring up, why are we talking about this movie now? Came out in 96, so it's not really celebrating anniversary right now of note. But Lacey, usually here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and Kyle, we do Christmas-themed movies during Christmas time. Last year we did Elf. I know we did Scrooge and stuff like that, but we wanted to give Lacey the choice for picking the Christmas movie. And Lacey, you chose A Long Kiss Goodnight. Why?
Because it's got a little bit of everything. It's got lights and snow and fancy things and helicopters and explosions and Samuel L. Jackson using his MFs everywhere. It's delightful. You've got all kinds of fun goodness, and I think this is one of those ones where I do keep this in my holiday collection. Like, I have a special section that's all for holiday movies. Yes, Die Hard is in there. It's fine. You can just get over it.
Right.
I know that these are just movies that take place at Christmas. This one does not involve Santa Claus or any magic of any sort. But it's a good movie that just gets me kind of right in the mood for Christmas for some reason. And I don't know why.
Well, Kyle, I to answer Lacey's question, and I'll let you go on this, but it literally starts off with a Christmas parade. Mm-hmm. So you get the feeling where the setting is immediate.
Well, I mean, the reason why Santa Claus is in this movie is have you seen Mrs. Claus?
He's done well. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into the rest of the show here. Of course, recently on the Couch Potato Theater, we got Abyss coming up because we're celebrating Cameron films that have come out on 4K. We also did Spinal Tap, celebrating its 40th anniversary, and also the Cameron love continued. We have released Terminator 1984, celebrating its 40th anniversary. And coming soon, we have Aliens 1986. And we also covered Aliens expanded, very expanded 4-hour plus documentary that came out this year. We went into detail on that. And we just recorded Johnny Dangerously, which was a lot of fun. It's celebrating its 40th anniversary in December of 2024. And also coming soon, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. We're doing a instant couch potato mash on that. And next year of 2025, we're going to be celebrating the 1980 Canon films retrospective. We've chosen several Canon action films that we are going to show a lot of love to. But right now, we are celebrating the Long Kiss Goodnight here on Couch Potato Theater. I did some digging. I have some pictures and slides of other posters. These are the ones that we're more familiar with here in the U.S. These two posters here. If you're listening to this, check out the video. You'll see what we're talking about. I did find some other versions of the posters from overseas and the video covers there. But let's get into the movie time, guys. All right. So our first thing that we're going to do here is the IMDb possibly vague and not always spot on plot description. And guys, make sure you get your notes up here because I'm going to need your help with the trivia later here. We got some fun stuff with that. But the main plot description for IMDb says government agent comes. Sorry, let me say that again. Government agents come after an amnesiac woman who gradually remembers her past. It could be a little better. We've had some better plot descriptions from IMDb, wouldn't you say, guys?
Yeah. I mean, kids, the main notes.
They say that in Hollywood, you have to have a one line, like a tag, just so that you can, they want you to have what they call an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Anytime you write a movie or whatever. And that's pretty solid.
I mean, okay. For an elevator pitch, that is pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Well, this movie was released on October 11th, 1996. Running time was about 2 hours with a budget of $65 million and made just over $95 million. On its opening weekend, the film grossed a little over $9 million in about 2,200 theaters. Coming third among films opening that weekend, it grossed $33 million in the U.S. and Canada and $62 internationally for a worldwide gross of $95 million. Plus, Renny Harlin, the director, blamed the film's poor performance on confusing advertising, but Shane Black wondered, of course, he's the one that wrote the script, wondered if it might have been more successful if it were about a man. It might have made more money, they told me, but it had to be a woman. The lead had to be female. It was also been suggested that the film's poor advertising campaign and lukewarm critical reception may have been a carryover effect from Renny Harlin and Geena Davis's previous collaboration, Cutthroat Island, which was released 10 months earlier and was one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Kyle, I want to get your thoughts on this because I remember them two becoming a couple soon after Cutthroat Island. And then I actually like Cutthroat Island. It's a guilty pleasure for me. Lacey does too. But Renny Harlin kind of had a thing going on here. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things that were said there why this movie didn't do as well as it did. I think there was some backlash from Cutthroat Island with the movie files. I think there was a lot of maybe people were feeling nepotism because Renny Harlin and Geena Davis were together at that point. This movie had a horrible marketing campaign. I mean, it was confusing. You weren't sure what the hell this movie was about. I remember when the ads came out for it. I don't think it mattered if it was a man or a woman in this case in the lead. Truthfully, with the way the story was written, I think more than anything, it was poorly marketed.
Oops. Lacey?
I think that it would have been really difficult for someone who was a male who was cast to give birth to that baby. I feel like it would have been very difficult. It would have been, I mean,
you could have rewritten that a little bit.
It would be hard for him to stay off the radar as a man who just given birth. I'm just saying they would have found him faster.
They would have rewritten that to he ended up, maybe they found an infant with him or something like that. They would have done something.
It's funny though, because you think about this. This was 96, right? So we've seen some pretty solid, female like badass chicks at this
yes.
point. We've got
yeah. So why wouldn't Hollywood accept that?
Right? And Geena Davis is like a force. She's 6 foot tall. She is fit, tone. Like she beats the schnitzel out of some people in this movie. Like she does. She holds her own. And
it's not like she's off of the radar. It's not like she's not a hot commodity on film anymore. I mean, I get Cutthroat Island might have cut her down a little bit, and Renny Harlin and anyone. Matthew Modine, that was my only issue. He was miscast in that film. But I feel like, she was still a screen presence.
Oh, 100%. But, and so, with I think I wished this had, 6 more movies. Like I would have watched 6 sequels to this. And I think
it could have been a franchise.
Yeah, it could have absolutely been a franchise. And honestly, you could have done a spinoff with Samuel L. Jackson's character. That would have been just as fun.
Yeah, Kyle.
So I have some thoughts on this, but I'm going to save it for when we hit our hot take section.
Okay.
Yeah, and also too, I have some information, especially with the interview with Samuel Jackson, about a possible sequel in the sequel section that we'll talk about. But yeah, no, if it's I think it could have been several things. Cutthroat Island, but Renny Harlin, he was coming in. He did Die Hard 2. He did Cliffhanger, so he was like a notable action director. But I think there is a lot of truth, though, personally for me, for Cutthroat Island, just really put a bad taste, not necessarily in fans, in some fans, yes, but in the industry, people that are putting the money behind these projects, of not, But I know this movie seemed to have a lot of really good components, and we were always. As a fan, I'm always game to have a kick-ass female action star. It's not like we haven't had it before, and we have plenty more to come after that. But I want to ask you guys. Oh, yeah, Lacey.
No, and I was going to say, like, the general public doesn't remember who directed things. They remember the visuals. They remember the actors, right? But as far as when I'm back then, when I was going to go see a movie, and I tell whoever or our parents or whatever, be like, oh, I'm gonna go see Long Kiss Goodnight, Long Kiss Goodnight, and they'd be like, oh, okay, and I'd be like, okay, the same guy who directed, and they'd be like, okay. Like back then, it wasn't something that people would go, oh, who directed?
Yeah, well, but I think in the aspect too is a lot of people were talking about Cutthroat Island and Geena Davis, and I think association with her Cutthroat Island kind of hurt her.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I go back to this. They didn't know how to market this movie. They couldn't figure out what this movie was in its marketing.
And I actually was a fan of Renny Harlin. I liked his style. I remember him being interviewed, and I was just like, and he's done some weird little films like 2006, The Covenant, which is a film that I like too.
And Driven.
Yeah, he did Driven, which we did actually, Kyle, on an episode of
Save from Oblivion.
Save from Oblivion. But of course, not only did Die Hard 2, then he goes on and does Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which we're going to be covering next year because it follows in 1990. And so he also one of my favorite sequels too, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. So I was all over and a big fan of Renny Harlin. So yeah, but I want to ask you guys, first of all, two-part question here. I always do here on Couch Potato Theaters. First of all, how did you watch it originally, and then how did you watch it recently? Lacey, start with you. This is your pick.
In 1996, I was working at I'm pretty sure 96 is when I was working at an AMC theater. And we got to see, now this is back when you had the reels, the giant, no pre-digital, you had the physical reels, and we would have to move them from section to section up top. And in order to make sure that the film was properly put together, properly sequenced, one or two people would have to watch it the night before or the week before, at 2:00 in the morning after the movie theater had closed. And this was, I want to say, the first movie that I watched after hours at like 2:00 in the morning. It was just me and the projectionist. Her name was Julie. She was very
okay. Cool. No, I've heard of this. My buddy Kat, who we know on the network here, used to work at a local theater, and this is basically the secret employee screenings that I sometimes would sneak in with them when they would do that.
Well, yes and no. This wasn't an employee screening. This was the sequence screener. Like, so, because when they come in like the containers are this big, right? But when they put everything out together, it's on a platter that's 4 or 5 feet wide. So they have to put it comes with reels, right? So
gotcha. Okay.
Order. And there have been many times where because the projectionist puts it together. So if the reels are mislabeled when someone else put them in there or whatever, you have to watch the movie to make sure that there's not a weird 14-minute flashback that doesn't make sense because the reels were put together in the wrong order.
So I want to ask you real quick before you tell me how you watched it recently. At the theater you're working at, what kind of response did it get at your theater?
It was great. I remember going to see it not just once. I probably saw it 4 or 5 times. I thought it was great action. It was a strong female lead. Samuel L. Jackson was hilarious, and he wasn't huge at that point. 96, right. He had some hits. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't the bad. When did Pulp Fiction come out? 94.
94.
So it was like this was like one of the first movies he did after Pulp Fiction where he had the giant
and he was nominated for an Oscar for that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
A lot of people were following Samuel L. Jackson to see that because this was the next thing he did after Pulp Fiction.
So I assume when you've watched it recently, it was on Blu-ray, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right. I checked to see if it was streaming free for somewhere. I couldn't find it. So so I think it's
Pluto. Pluto TV.
Pluto? It is on Pluto? Okay. Well, Kyle, you answer the question. Where did you see this originally?
I actually didn't see this until it came out on home video, DVD. It wasn't in the theaters long here, so I didn't get a chance to catch it before it left the theater. So I saw it on DVD, and then I recently rewatched it on digital. And the thing with this movie is it's a great little self-contained action film. And there was a lot of potential here. And I think this is one of those movies that at the time ended up getting kind of lost in the shuffle. And it just kind of, I don't want to say it kind of in its own way went into a little bit of oblivion. It kind of had a little bit of cult status because of the Samuel Jackson connection and some of the other people that are in it, but it just never really got the traction it probably should have gotten for a lot of the reasons we just discussed.
And I don't remember what it was up against that year. I don't remember what the Christmas movies were in, or actually what was the actual date? Was this a Thanksgiving movie or a Christmas movie? I can't remember. Does anybody have
I think I said it was October, I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So I don't remember what it was up against. I mean, if it was October, it may have been up against somehow.
Let me confirm that. I just said that earlier. It was October 11th, 1996. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, Kyle, how did you watch it recently then? Was it on Pluto?
And I have a digital copy, and I watched it on iTunes.
You're like the digital copy king. Of course you do. Yes. All right, guys. So let's get into the main movie discussion here. And one of the things that is a big discussion during this time of the... Yes, Kyle?
I just looked up some of the movies that this was up against in October of '96. Included The Ghost in the Darkness, the D3, the third Mighty Ducks film.
Yep.
You also had Sleepers, The Glimmer Man, and
That Thing You Do.
Yeah, that thing, and then Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
And the English Patient.
So, okay, you know what's interesting? You brought something up, and I had to do a little research here. I was kind of curious where Geena Davis was in her movie career at this time, and it's interesting, guys. So think about this for a second. So you go back to, you got The Fly in '86, right? You got Fletch in '85. And then she goes Transylvania 5000 in '85, then Fly, then Beetlejuice, and one of my favorites, Earth Girls Are Easy, The Accidental Tourist, Quick Change. Then she does Thelma and Louise, A League of Her Own, Hero, Angie, Speechless, Cutthroat Island, Long Kiss Goodnight. After this, it's kind of she has her own show called the Geena Davis Show. She does Stuart Little, right? But then like she does like an episode of Will and Grace. Then she does the voice again for Stuart Little 3, Commander-in-Chief TV series. Then she kind of falls off movie stardom, to be honest with you. She does some, TV series here and there. She did 13 episodes of Grey's Anatomy. She does Hunter of the Voice in She-Ra. So she kind of just falls off after this. Did this movie hurt her career? Let's get into the movie discussion about that.
I'm looking at her IMDb in front of me right now. This is kind of really her last major motion picture on screen.
Yeah.
Stuart Little maybe, but yeah, it kind of feels like she didn't do a lot after A League of Their Own. She did Hero, which I know kind of bombed, Angela, Speechless, and Cutthroat Island. None of those were huge success films. So I'm wondering if that was part of it. And she really hasn't. It's like she kind of blew up with Thelma and Louise and A League of Their Own, and that was her apex. And it's like she had this really bright moment, and I think she just, because of Beetlejuice and a couple other things, and her look is so memorable, but she really hasn't stood the test of time since then.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't even have a cameo in the new one. Lisa, you're on mute, but go ahead.
You're on mute, Lacey.
I was finding the button. She had kids. She had twins. And so that was about...
Are those Renny's kids?
No, she married Jahari. I can't remember his name.
Okay. So she kind of became a mom then?
Yeah, so look, having a child is stressful. She had twins, so I would imagine that she wanted to spend a little bit of time, figure that, do the motherhood thing, and that's great. And then she had another child, so she has 3 kids now, and I think they were like 5 or 6 years apart between the twins and the second child, or the third kid. So
you think though that she might, get under the radar of some other major movie studio, and then. But
that's the thing,
star,
she did a couple of guest spots here and there to stay on some shows. She did some Will and Grace. She did a couple of guest spots. That's kind of what you do when you want to take the break, but still, yeah.
So, okay. Well, the other discussion I wanted to bring up here, this always comes up during this time of year, guys, is what's considered a Christmas movie. There's been a long debate about Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and your more traditional Christmas movies, of course, Scrooged and Christmas Story and It's a Wonderful Life. It just goes back and forth every year. We have our own thoughts about that. Maybe one day we'll have the big debate off on that ourselves here on the Fandom Podcast Network. But here we go. We start off. This is considered a Christmas movie by many. The Long Kiss Goodnight writer Shane Black likes to set his movies during Christmas time. And let me explain. The trademark of screenwriter Shane Black, the film's action occurs within Christmas season, just like Lethal Weapon in 87, Iron Man 3 in 2013, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005, The Nice Guys in 2016, and The Last Boy Scout in 1991. Shane Black, we can always expect him to not only kind of do the buddy cop type scenario in his films, you know, he puts two unlikely people together, or friends, what have you, but also have some Christmas time. Lacey, obviously, you picked this for Christmas. What are your thoughts?
I know that there are, well, okay, let's face it, there's literally a Santa right there on the screen. I think that when it comes down to whether or not something is a Christmas movie, you know, the old question is whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie, because even if you say it's only a Christmas movie if it involves Christmas specifically. Well, realistically, he would not have been going to the Christmas party and to go visit his kids if it wasn't Christmas. Anyway,
I'll debate you with that on another show, but not here.
And this, I think that this is like there's no got to do the thing by the time to make sure that Christmas is fixed. There's no we got to find Santa. I think this is a film that takes place at Christmas time, and that is enough for me to watch it at Christmas.
I think actually this is more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard, honestly. But just barely. But I'm a huge fan of Shane Black. We'll come back to him later. But I just feel like he loved, for whatever reason, and I would love to ask him personally one day, why do you do that? And I would love to get his take on it. Kyle, what are your thoughts? Christmas movie, this movie seems to be.
I think as this debate has gone on for the last few years, it really does come down to two categories. Is it a Christmas movie where the Christmas is the theme of the movie, or is it a movie that takes place during Christmas? In both cases, you can claim these are movies I would watch at Christmas because it's involved. Christmas is involved, so it gives me that a little bit of Christmassy feeling. In this case, this is a movie that takes place during Christmas. And yes, it's okay to watch it at Christmas and say, yes, it's part of my Christmas rotation, because guess what? It does have a Christmassy aspect to it. And unfortunately, in this case, we learned that if you are an amnesiac assassin, don't be Mrs. Claus in the Christmas Day parade. It leads to all kinds of problems. I think in this case, I agree with Kevin too. I think this is a little bit more of a Christmassy feeling movie than Die Hard, because there's a little bit more Christmas involvement in it. But again, I think what it is this is a movie that takes place at Christmas. It's okay to watch at Christmas if it gives you some Christmas feeling, but it is not a Christmas movie. And I think it's a clarification aspect.
Yeah.
But
yeah, listen.
The main reason that the one-eyed angry bad guy that I can't remember his name,
One-eyed Jack,
the reason he goes after her is because he sees her on TV in a Christmas parade.
Yeah.
That is the reason that everything is set in motion for this movie.
We're going to come back to that. I have a thought about that. So in retrospect, Geena Davis says, I love that movie. My character might be my favorite role. It's a close call between Thelma and that one. Anyway, that movie came out great and I got some good reception, but it didn't soar to heights, let's say perhaps as we wanted it to. And Samuel Jackson stated The Long Kiss Goodnight was his favorite movie to watch that he was in. Of all the films he made, Renny Harlin said The Long Kiss Goodnight was his favorite. Now, I always like to find a article that's related to the release of these films. And this article came out by Jimmy McLean on girlswithguns.org, November 1st, 2021. And Shane Black has a quote in the beginning here. We have a mommy who slays the monsters for her daughter, but the monsters are real. And the article goes on to say it was the second collaboration in our field between Renny Harlin and then wife Geena Davis. The first was Cutthroat Island, a film whose troubled production and spectacular failure we have previously covered. But that did not dissuade either Harlin or the studio New Line Pictures from trying again, albeit with the troublesome period setting and seagoing. As a result, the budget there was $65 million, a third lower than Cutthroat Island. Some aspects were still not exactly cheap. The writer Shane Black at the time was a rock star screenplay author, having written Lethal Weapon, Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero. Still, the script for this provoked a bidding war between New Line, Warner Brothers, and Columbia Studios, eventually costing the first named $4 million back in July of 1994, excluding a $5,000 or $500,000 producer fee for Black. That was a new record for a script at the time, breaking the previous record of $3 million paid to Joe Esterhaus for Basic Instinct. So, he goes on to kind of talk about the box office failure of this, that people considered on this and stuff like that. But he does say, truth be told, I've seen this several times over the years. It always feels like I should like it more than I do. And I come away feeling a little disappointed, especially now. It's a product of its time and certainly pales in comparison to not dissimilar spy movies such as Salt or Atomic Blonde. The pacing feels particularly leisurely, with its being close to an hour before Samantha Kane Davis gets fully in touch with her inner assassin. I want to bring that up with you guys too, because I hadn't seen this movie in, I'm going to say, maybe 20 years. And so when you brought this up, Lacey, I own it. I had this, DVD. I've had this DVD forever, but for whatever reason, I just haven't gotten around to rewatching it. It would always come up in conversation, oh yeah, it was a good movie, but something didn't draw me to it. And as I watched it, I've watched it twice for prep for this podcast, and I kind of feel there is a pacing issue with it. But then when I watched it again, I'm like, okay, I'm in it. I guess the more you watch it, the better it gets. But I want to get your thoughts on that concern.
Me or Kyle?
You.
Me. Okay. I think that the reason that it's paced the way it is because Samantha's life is very quiet and relaxed and calm. And so the pacing of the film starts out very quiet and relaxed and calm. A couple of things happen. She has reactions to those things, but then she legit just gets in a car with a stranger, Samuel L. Jackson's character, the detective, and until she actually flips into the Charlie of it all. Because, let's face it, there are a few spots in the first half of the film where Charlie kind of makes an appearance, almost like a schizophrenia outburst. And then she'll kind of snap back and be like, what just happened? Like, where's that gun doing there? Things like that. But then once Charlie takes over and she snaps back into her personality, it's bang, 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 bang from there. So I think that the personality of the two different characters that she plays, or the one character and two personalities that she plays, are specifically related to those pacing choices.
Kyle, what do you think?
So I just watched this last night, and I agree. This movie has some odd pacing, and while I think in ways it was intentional, it really almost feels like it's almost three different movies pushed into one film, because you've got the beginning movie of her being amnesiac, the friendly mom doing these weird little things. Then you kind of add in the Samuel Jackson with his detective trying to find out the truth. And then things start slowly shifting to the government aspect. And then it just goes on to full on spy thriller with the last maybe third of it. And I think part of the problem for me was with this is that it didn't feel like they bridged the gaps to tie these in as well as they could have. And I think it feels a little bit jumpy. And I'll give you the perfect example is when they get to the farm and it's dataless and all that just felt like really like a weird.
Are you talking about when they get to David Morse's character?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get to David Morse's character, and that just kind of like weird feel. And then that was just a whole weird situation. And then it just transitions from that to her going to becoming Charlie again. And then once that happens, it feels like the movie's kind of found its footing again and is going. But that middle sequence when we're dealing with all that, it just feels like, okay, we're still missing way too much of the story here. And they're talking about a mission that was 8 years just happening now, that was been 8 years ago, that she's remembering this. There's a lot of stretches.
Gotcha. Okay. Lacey, you had a retort?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to start a movie out as a Hallmark Christmas movie and then transition successfully into a Lifetime, movie of the week where, the bad thing happens, and then once again successfully transitioned into like a really kick-ass spy flick. So I think that they did pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think there is some little pacing issues on there, but it's still a good rewatchable film. Let's get into some movie reviews I got here. So Rotten Tomatoes, it holds a 68% approval rating. The site consensus states smart, sharp-witted, and fueled by enjoyable, over-the-top action. Long Kiss Goodnight makes up an impact what it lacks in consistent aim. Audiences polled by Cinema Score gave it an A-, which is pretty good. Christine James of Box Office gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, calling it a lot of fun, but believing that there were some weaknesses in the script. And Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars, stating, quote, I admire it as an example of craftsmanship, but what a lot of time and money to spend on something of no real substance. So there you go. Kyle.
I think the reviews really kind of match where a lot of people feel about this film, and I think it's one of these reasons why this movie just didn't blow up like it possibly could have. Is just a lot of people felt like it was missing something, or just didn't have everything together. And honestly, I think that we're at a time and place. If this movie's made 15 years later, they probably have that kind of thing a lot more figured out than what he had at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, guys, bring up your movie trivia there. We're going to go ahead and take some turns reading it here. I will go first. And I also got a nice little picture here on set of Renny Harlin with, of course, his then wife Geena and Samuel Jackson there. So first trivia I've got here is on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon back in 2014, or excuse me, back in 2019, Samuel L. Jackson listed Mitch as his favorite role. Saying a lot. I mean, we're talking like all of his famous roles, including Pulp Fiction, which he was nominated for. Says Mitch was his favorite. Lacey, why don't you go next?
Geena Davis and then husband director Renny Harlin checked how long she could hold her breath in their bathtub to prepare for their water torture scene.
I wonder how long that was. I don't know if I could find that out, but yeah. Kyle, hit us up next.
Yeah, I do want to go back real quick just to that Samuel Jackson about his favorite role, because I know that when they did test screenings of this, people were so upset that they killed Samuel Jackson in the original version, and that they said, you can't kill Sam Jackson. Apparently, you know, if this had been 10 years later after Deep Blue Sea came out, it would be a whole different story. But yeah, moving on trivia, screenwriter Shane Black sold the script for the movie with the intention of Renny Harlin directing it and Geena Davis starring in it. Harlan then told him that he and Davis were contractually bound to make Cutthroat Island first, which became one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Black later stated that this may have caused bad advertisement that worked against this movie as well. And I think this is one of those sliding doors moments. What if this came out before Cutthroat Island?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Shane Black, as we teased earlier, became the first writer to sell a script for $4 million. He later admitted that this caused a lot of envy among his fellow screenwriters, as well as accusations of commercialism. He voluntarily retired from the blockbuster industry for almost a decade as a result, because he was sleeping on that big pile of money. That's why. So.
It's awful comfy.
And that cost us a decade of kick-ass movies, is what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point, Lacey. Hit us with the next one.
This film and Cutthroat Island were attempts by Renny Harlin and his then wife Geena Davis to not only further her career, but to generate more public interest in in female action stars, which, hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. Kyle, next.
Shane Black's original script for this film was darker and more graphic than the final film. Among the many differences, it includes some alternate action sequences and more violence, like the scene where Mitch and Charlie are captured and get tortured. Both characters also had bigger backstories in the original script. Mitch at one point tells Charlie how he was gang raped in prison and how his wife refuses to let him see his son because of what happened to him. And Charlie also had more of a dark back history in the script than in the film.
That makes sense when he comes in and he sets up the guy with the prostitute, and he talks about, being in jail. So that scene makes a little more sense there. Or what would happen to him if he was in jail, basically. So yeah. Geena Davis was the first female actor ever to say "suck my dick" in a movie in this film.
Nice.
Lacey?
Female rapper and Murder Inc. recording artist Tiffany Lane uses the name Charlie Baltimore as her moniker, spelled differently, Charli as opposed to Charly. Lane is a lover of of the New York famous rapper Notorious B.I.G., who had recorded a song "Long Kiss Goodnight" on his '97 album "Life After Death."
All right, Kyle.
During development, New Alliance Cinema considered turning the lead character into a male. Steven Seagal and Sylvester Stallone were considered as suitable choices if the lead had gone that way. Totally different film. Totally.
I feel like, I feel like during certain times, like any of the main actors are considered for everything. Whether they get them or not is something. So yeah. And the last one I have here, Samuel Jackson said in a GQ interview that he read the script and really wanted the role, but the studio said it was written as a white character. Jackson then met Geena and Renny at a Christmas party, and he told them that he loved the script. And wanted the role. And Renny said, "You want to be in my film?" And then you got it. And that was that. So there you go. All right, guys, let's get into our first segment here. This is, of course, our favorite scenes. And I'll throw up some slides here of scenes that I've picked randomly here. But Lacey, give me some of your favorite scenes in this movie.
Okay, chopping all the vegetables was great, super fun, super cute. That's awesome. But when she slashes the light chain or the chain and does the pulley and rides up the thing and grabs the guy's gun as he falls down and then comes up to just the look on her face, it's so good, and it just awesome. And also, should we get a puppy? Like that, like random and fun, like little scene breaks. It's great.
Nice, Kyle. What about you?
I love the whole scene in the train station, and when they escape, and she's shooting the ice. It's just a phenomenal action sequence.
You mean when they jump out of the window and to land safely, she's using the machine gun to blow a hole through the ice so they don't die on the hard ice.
Yeah. I love that scene. I just love that whole action sequence within that scene, and her kind of our reintroduction of her to the main villain of the film as well. And I'm just gonna say, pretty much any scene Sam Jackson's in this movie, he's stealing it. He is great in this film. I love the scene too where they're talking. He realizes, oh, you finally figured out you don't need me, and she just literally pushes him out of the car, and he just lays on the ground, lights a cigarette, and waits until knowing she's coming back because she still needs him.
Yeah, I love the train sequence when they get. I mean, chaos just breaks out in that. I mean, a lot of innocent people get shot. She starts to, I love how he does a little thing where he says, like, he sings a song, like putting my gun in my pocket, blah, blah, blah. And she remembers that so that when the first assassin comes up, she reaches into his coat and shoots through, grabs his gun in the pocket and shoots the first bad guy. And then all of a sudden, all the other bad guys show up and stuff. So that's fun. I got to laugh, though, the Brian Cox scene with, I think it's his mom with the dog that has been continuously licking his ass for 3 hours.
Yes. I submit that if what he was looking for does not take more than an hour, I submit that it has either been removed or is there forever.
Yeah. There's some other great scenes we'll bring up in some other segments here, but let's get to our favorite quotes here, guys. I started off with one with the show when she's of course stuck in the freezer with her daughter, and about how they're going to die and you want to get a puppy. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on some of your other favorite quotes. Lacey,
what's going on with you? You used to, when I met you, you were like, "Oh, phooey, I burned the darn muffins." Now you'd walk into a bar and sailors come running out. That's a delightful line. I have used that line in my real life. Oh my goodness, I love it.
Kyle, you got any favorite quotes?
One of them. There's two that really stand out for me. One is when Mitch is talking to Nathan. Jesus, old man, how many of these have you got? 3. One shoulder, one hip, and one down here, right next to Mr. Wally, where the pat downs never reveal it, as even the most hardened federal agent is often reluctant to feel up another man's groin. Any other questions? yeah, what's the weather like on your planet?
Yeah.
And the other one I'm always a big fan of is Mitch. I'm going in. Charlie, you can't. There's too many of them. Well, kill them for me, bitch. What else are you good for?
I love that one. That's funny. Yeah, there's some great lines.
I just want to say it's an amazing chemistry between Sam Jackson and Geena Davis, especially considering how much Geena Davis's character changes throughout the film, and yet they still have this amazing back and forth, no matter which version of Geena Davis's character he's working with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do love the fact that he has more of the, like, an emotional maturity. You know, when she starts like kind of coming on to him and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I haven't had a date in 8 years. And he says, no, you're trying to kill your past. You're trying to kill this other persona by, you know, sleeping with like a random dude, as opposed to this, you know, emotional connection you have with a child and your I guess.
And she carries that over when she says
Yeah.
they've got the kid instead of saying
Yeah.
they've got my child. And it's not until she reunites with her daughter then things change. So yeah, that's a good call. Well, let's talk about the cast and crew, guys. We got the cast and crew discussion here, and I just want to get your thoughts on the main cast and crew. I got some. If you're watching the video, I got some now and then pictures, of course. Of course, you got Geena Davis as Samantha Kane, Charlie, Samuel Jackson as Mitch, Yvonne Zima as the daughter Caitlin, Craig Bierko as Timothy, Brian Cox as Nathan, David Morse as Luke, and of course Joseph McKenna as One-Eyed Jack. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the cast. Lacey, start with you.
I feel like David Morse is part of the club with Paul Rudd, where they just don't. They look exactly the same all the time.
You mean he's had gray hair since he was 19?
Well, yeah, but it works for him, you know. I don't know. Anyway, and I love him. I'll watch whatever he does. He's in some of my favorite films. I think Craig Bierko, he deserves so much more. Like he deserves to be much more well known than he is. It is tough to play a character that straight up punches a woman in the face multiple times and still come. I mean, he's a bad, like he's evil. Like, he doesn't threaten to kill her child. He threatens to blind her and shoot out her kneecaps. Like,
I have thoughts on Craig that I'm going to share later, but that's interesting that you say that and you bring him up.
Like, that's a hard character to pull off.
Yeah. Kyle, your thoughts on the cast?
Well, obviously Sam Jackson and Geena Davis are great in this. It's so interesting to see Yvonne Zima, because she had such a unique look as a child, and you see her now and grown up, and it's just kind of weird to see her like that. But first of all, David Morse, he's one of those guys. He always has to be the bad guy, or the not right guy, because I've seen him in too many things. This Disturbia, so many things where he plays the bad guy, and he plays it such a just evil, off-base bad guy, and he's so good. And of course, Brian Cox. What can you say? It's Brian Cox. It's everything with him is just great in this. This really is, from top to bottom, a very solid, and maybe somewhat underrated, known but unknown cast. If you get what I'm saying, where like, oh, you know them when you see them, and it's like, oh yeah, I forget how good they are. But at the time, you're like, oh yeah, this is a much better cast than what I initially realized now that I look at it.
Right. I want to give a shout out to Yvonne Zima, who plays, Caitlin, the daughter?
Cathead?
What's that?
Cathead? That's what Samuel Jackson calls him, Cathead? Cathead?
What's interesting too is that Shane Black didn't forget about her. She was in The Nice Guys, also in Iron Man 3 as well. But what I liked is there's an important scene where she's learning how to ice skate, and she falls and hurts herself, and then something kind of clicks in, Charlie, and saying, life is pain, get up, blah, blah, blah. But what I like about it, in all of the intense scenes and the being captured scenes and the action scenes, she doesn't really lose her cool as a kid. She's not annoying, And she's like there with her mom, blasting people away with machine guns. And, I liked her character as a kid. And so something to kind of think about is when we do talk about the possible sequel ideas and stuff, I think that character would have been cool to bring up and be a major player in a possible sequel. We can talk about that later. Kyle?
I want to say too, how level-headed is a kid when mommy's actually kept a flammable liquid in your doll that wets itself?
I know, right? All right, guys. The next segment we have coming up here, and I'm giving you a choice this time. Instead of making it two separate segments, we're going to make this one. I'm going to give you guys a choice here. This is the Ocean's 11. Do you think we need one more? Who would you add to the cast? Or if Tom Selleck was Indiana Jones, which cast member would you replace with another actor, and who? So, Kyle, I'm going to go to you here. And now I do have a list. I always do this. I do have a list of the top 100 stars at the time this movie was being made. And the top 10 were Jim Carrey, Mel Gibson, John Travolta, Sandra Bullock, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Brad Pitt, Michelle Pfeiffer, Tom Cruise, Denzel Washington, and Bruce Willis. And I always say, if you do choose someone to add to the cast, you can't have someone overshadow the current cast. So if you do choose that, keep that in mind. But, or if you would replace someone, who would you replace? Kyle, I'm going to start with you.
So I would replace the love interest in this, the actor who played her love interest in the beginning of the film, because it is a little bit of stunt casting, but I'd cast Hugh Grant because you're at Christmas time, a little bit more, just to have a little bit of fun with it.
Okay.
And then if you're talking at the time, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more later, but if you're talking at the time, I think if you would have to recast Geena Davis, I'd go Renee Russo.
You would recast Geena Davis?
No, I'm not saying I would if you had to.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I think she's great. Geena Davis is perfect in this role for at the time. But yeah, I think I would add Hugh Grant in as the love interest because I could.
It's funny.
Reactions.
So you got me thinking, Kyle. I'm like, where was Hugh Grant in his, his career at the time? Okay, so you got Four Weddings, a Funeral in '94. This movie came out in '96, and you got Sirens, An Awfully Big Adventure. Then he does The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill but Came Down a Mountain, and then he does a romantic comedy, 9 Months. And if I remember correctly, this was also around that time where he got busted helping out a sex worker down in Hollywood.
That was a little bit later because he hadn't married Elizabeth Hurley yet.
Okay. But yeah, so but it's around that time though. But that would be an interesting.
This is definitely still in his floppy-haired stage.
Yeah. So what would you do? What do you choose? Would you add someone to the cast, or would you replace someone in the cast, Lacey?
It might be fun to see some of the other people that she had put away. Some of the people that were in prison. Like, I feel like there could be kind of it would have been an interesting thing to be able to show her, I don't know, badassness by taking a look at.
I like where you're going with that. I like that.
People that she had maybe like caused damage to, or maybe like in flashbacks show like people that she had dispatched, right? And you have a full lineup of A-list people you just listed that could be 30-second cameos, just watching her just off people. Like she could just assassinate, go through a list of them. That would have been cool. But I don't think, as far as plot is concerned, I don't think that there's nothing necessary, and I can't think of anywhere to put anybody new.
Okay, so I like that suggestion. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my thoughts here. So I would replace Craig Bierko as the main bad guy in this with, go with me here, Bill Pullman. Now, earlier this summer, the biggest movie comes out. He does one of the greatest presidential speeches of all time in Independence Day.
Mm-hmm.
How cool would it be? He makes a turn to a bad guy, because we don't see him play bad guys very often, do we? No. I thought it would have been great if he was the Craig Bierko character. And then, as you kind of mentioned, if I had to add someone to the cast, it would be Famke Janssen. Of course, she's hot off GoldenEye, that's coming around the same time. But I thought it'd be kind of cool if she was like either an old friend or an old colleague. and you saw a flashback with Charlie and she gets killed or something like that, or maybe she's in jail. Just kind of a smaller role, but of course her star is rising at the time. What do you think, Kyle? Am I off base here?
I could see her bringing her in as like another female spy or something like that. The Pullman thing, I don't think he takes the role because I don't think he is so beloved at this point that I get where you're coming from.
It would be an awesome term for him to play a despicable bad. Can you imagine him saying that line of like, I'm gonna, shoot her knees out and stuff like that?
But I also thought of one other thing too. For the fun of it, and this is strictly for the fun of it, you replace Brian Cox with Tommy Lee Jones just so Sam Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones can work off of each other.
I know Brian Cox's star was on the rise because then he goes into the X-Men series and so I love. I don't know if anyone could have pulled off that line with the cat licking his ass for 3 hours line better than Brian Cox.
Right? Oh my gosh. With Bill Pullman though, I mean he gives good creepy in Lone Star.
Yeah,
and he played kind of the dejected kind of obviously.
Wait, hold on. Creepy Lone Star and Spaceballs?
No, not playing Lone Star. There's a film called Lone Star.
Oh, I never saw it. To me, isn't he Lone Star in Spaceballs?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. He in what is it? Zero Effect. He played kind of not a bad guy, but just an a-hole.
Right.
Which was kind of fun. I know he could do it. But Craig Bierko to me, like he was just brutal, and I dug it. Like he was, he knew the assignment.
I have different thoughts on him for a later segment.
Okay.
All right. The next one we have here is the Fast or Not So Furious favorite mode of transportation. This is where I was kind of disappointed in the movie. There really wasn't like really cool cars in this. Really, there's a couple that kind of stand out. You've got, of course, the car that she has at the end, and the car that she pushes Samuel Jackson out of. But it wasn't really a good car movie, to be perfectly honest with you. Did you guys have any memorable? I mean, you could throw in obviously generic helicopter A if you want. What do you think, Lacey?
I'm gonna go with ice skates
as a vehicle.
Yeah, that is a mode of transportation.
She does use it effectively in this film, right? So yeah.
That was an awesome scene. And also, like, she rode that chain up the thing. That's a you pointing.
It's a stretch. It's a stretch.
I'm taking it.
I think you're not understanding the spirit of the segment, but I appreciate.
I do think that the ice skates is legitimate.
I'll give that one to you.
You'll allow it? Okay.
Yeah, I'll allow it, but not the chain thing. No, Kyle.
I will always take the car that doesn't have the heater that works but makes such an annoying noise that you forget that you're
cold. This is true. Yes. Yeah. Oh, all right. The next one we have here is the Zoolander. They look so hot right now. Favorite costume or fashion moment. And we've got several with Geena Davis making her makeover into Charlie. Of course, she looks great as Mrs. Santa. But Samuel Jackson, I love how he dresses in this movie. Anything Samuel Jackson wears, I could never, ever pull off, but he can. And I love his costume outfits in this. You guys got any mentions, Lacey?
Samuel Jackson, the very end on Larry King.
Yep.
Suit is delightful in so many ways. And then there's the scene where they're in the hotel right after she's coming out and she's, taking her shower and changed her hair and all that kind of stuff. And you're seeing this big transformation for her. But then you see him in that, it's like a burnt yellow turtleneck.
Yeah.
The chips on it. And it's just, whoever the cast, the clothing designer on this, they had fun with him.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Geena Davis is gorgeous. She's 6 feet tall. She's statuesque. They can put her in a paper bag and she's going to look good. But they had so much fun with Samuel L. Jackson's entire wardrobe. I love that.
I like the scene, by the way, the scene you mentioned when he's like has his shirt off in the hotel room and he's wounded and she flashes him to like pull the bandage off to redress it to distract him.
Yep. But even the first scene where he breaks into the hotel room and with the two bums, that big long, like it was a Malahide trench coat.
Yeah.
That thing, he had the wardrobe going.
Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for wardrobe, Samuel Jackson is notorious for having some of the best wardrobe in any film he does. I think the only movie I can think of where maybe his wardrobe is even a little bit more fun is Formula 51. Because
yes. Didn't he have a kilt in that one? I think.
He had a kilt in that one. I think Kevin will agree with me on this though. The biggest crime is we didn't get that short-haired Geena Davis where she maintained her red hair.
Yeah.
You don't ever get rid of the red hair. You just
don't. All right, guys. The next category we have here is the Harry Met Sally scene, best scene or moment between two characters. I got a couple honorable mentions here. Anytime Geena Davis and Samuel Jackson are in a car talking, the dialogue is great. And I do love the moment in the freezer where Geena is with her daughter, and then she uses the gasoline and the famous line of "No, they're gonna die. And do you want to get a dog?" Do you guys have any moments of between two people?
Yeah. When she first finds out and she's with the husband, boyfriend, I don't know, the boyfriend, and she's chopping everything and she's like throws the knife and she's like, "Chef, do that." And then like within 30 seconds or a minute, of the explosions and the home invasion and everything, and she kills the guy and she like breaks his neck and she kills him with a pie. Okay, she smacks, like she disarms him, I guess, with a pie. Yeah. And then she licks her finger and it's like whipped cream and blood. And she looks up and she makes eye contact with this man who is her, genteel, quiet, relaxed, calm, like holiday Christmas film boyfriend. And she goes, it's just that so dastardly statement where she's like, "Chefs do that."
Technically, that's between three people because there's the corpse that she just killed. But that's a good moment.
He's not participating anymore.
Not anymore. He was. Yeah. Kyle, what about you?
I've said it. Basically, any scene between Samuel Jackson and Geena Davis is just fire in this. One of my favorites though is when right after she accidentally shoots the gun she found in the briefcase, and they're driving. And they get to, "Well, you didn't take the exit." He's like, "Yeah, give me my money back," and all that. There's just something about that scene where you see the humanity of Samuel Jackson's character, and I think that's a really, and it's kind of where I think it's also the scene where you kind of really see the emotional maturity switch of the film.
Yeah, Lacey.
And I do also love the scene. It's slightly later in that same scene where he's telling her about his past, where he was in prison and all this kind of stuff, and like how he got there, and he's talking about his former partner as a police officer, and she's like, "Oh, did he set you up?" And he's like, "No, I stole it." The guy never did anything right. Such a fantastic little line drop. I love it.
Next segment we have here is the best fight scene, guys. We got some to choose from here. The one you referred to, of course, in her kitchen with One-Eyed Jack. He comes back for revenge, and she takes care of things. And then, of course, the one with is it Timothy, Craig Bierko's character at the end. Some honorable mentions there. You guys got any other best fight scenes, Kyle?
I love the scene where she's playing the sniper and Sam Jackson's going down to try to rescue her daughter, and she's directing him off his flank and everything like that. And just it's a great action scene, but it's a great dialect between the two of them as well.
Good call. Yeah.
I think the full on like knockdown drag out fight before, like right when they capture Charlie, because Craig Bierko, again, he straight up punches this woman in the face multiple times, and she's given back as good as she gets. But that, again, it's just it's hard to pull off an unlikable character like that, and I think he did it very well.
All right, next we have you took him out with what? Your favorite weapon or inanimate object used as a weapon. Otherwise, the Clarence Boddicker Award for guns. And I got to showcase some weapons. If you're kind of a weapons nerd when it comes to movie weaponry like I am, there's some good ones in this one, guys. And a couple I want to start off with here is the one that One-Eyed Jack comes in. And if you're watching the video here, it's the one on the top here. It's basically a sawed-off lever-action Winchester shotgun with an M203 grenade launcher, which is normally on M16 rifles. But he has this weird combo of them together, and that has never been seen ever in time.
And that's never been seen since in time.
Yeah, it's a leverized shotgun with sawed-off stock with a shortened barrel. It is the weirdest thing ever. And then what I love, the thing about 80s movies, Kyle, and of course you probably may know this as well, Lacey, is that Uzis were everywhere. They were very popular, of course, in real life day conflict as well. But a lot of terrorists and bad guys used them. Even Mr. Lone Wolf McQuaid himself, Chuck Norris, had little mini Uzis hanging on a special shoulder rig in Invasion USA. But I love the fact that she uses one of the Uzis in the scene you mentioned earlier, Kyle, about breaking the ice as they're falling. I love that. And then we also got the sniper rifle that she instinctively knows how to put together. And I have that on the screen here as well. But one of the other good ones that I have here, I love this, that she is carrying a stainless Ruger Mini 14 that's black, and then it's got the steel components on the end of it. And what I like about this is the one she uses to cover Hennessy's character, Mitch, while she's shooting bad guys around him. But this gun came to famous notification for fans in the A-Team series, Kyle, because Hannibal and several of the actors love to use Mini 14s. It was known as the A-Team gun of choice that never shot anyone.
Well, two things here real quick. You talk about the Uzi, to quote the great Mel Gibson in Air America. Excuse me, is that an Uzi?
Yeah. Or Night of the Comet. My father would have gave us Uzis.
Yeah, but I mean that the rifle sheet, the A-Team rifle, is probably the most iconic.
Yeah, it was good. Lacey, I don't know, you're not much of a big gun head, but were there any that jumped out for you?
Well, okay. So, like I said a second ago, I think taking somebody out with a banana cream pie is like,
I think
that's
that wins. I mean, truthfully,
that's a pretty.
Well, she takes him out with a pie because it's a porcelain plate underneath it. She probably like broke his nose as well, right?
It's unconscious by pie. That's all I need to know.
Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. And then I think that the combination of retainer and gasoline-filled doll and meat hook, that's a solid combination. I know that they end up using
nice call out, Lacey. Well done. That is inanimate object used at its best.
That is solid MacGyvering right there.
Well done, Lacey.
The other thing, this movie does speak for allowing your kids to play with matches.
This is true. Yes, kid comes in there. All right, one of my favorite segments here is the Sean Bean Award for best death scene here, guys. And I got to make a call out here first, because you kind of alluded to one, Lacey, here. First of all, the one-eyed Jack death scene that you, of course, laid out perfectly. Chefs do that, because like she knocks him out with the pie, and then she ends up snapping his neck, right? And then, of course, Timothy does die screaming like Charlie promised, being shot out of the helicopter and landing on the truck on the bridge that explodes. But this was an honorable mention, but this actually gets my best mention. I'm changing it here. My favorite is the gunner from the helicopter that gets shot by Charlie, shoots himself with the flare and falls out of the helicopter in a ball of fire, then gets caught up in thus Christmas lights, as you mentioned earlier, Lacey, on the bridge, and continues to burn to a crispy death. While hanging dead still, Charlie cuts the remaining Christmas tree line to raise herself up to him, steals his hanging machine gun to shoot Timothy out of the helicopter. Apparently, you can't write this stuff except for Shane Black. Lacey, what were some of your favorite death scenes in this?
I feel like there definitely needs to be an honorable mention for, I think his name was Larry, the older guy who she was given a ride home to at the beginning of the movie. Because when they're in that car accident, she flies through the window, gets up, she's in the snow, no shoes, she kills the deer, which is kind of a note to remember, like kind of flash forward for killing One-Eyed Jack. But in that scene, when they pan out, the car is straight up on fire, and that man has not exited the vehicle.
Well,
Like,
if you
her friend
this
was
is true.
burned to a crisp.
At least he got to cop Geena Davis before that happened. So
And he smacked her in the face. He didn't like grab anything. My goodness gracious.
Kyle, what about you?
Well, Lacey just kind of stole my thunder because how can you forget about killing the deer? I mean,
Deer.
a deer to walk up and just snap a deer's neck like that,
Putting it out of its misery, we
Yeah,
must,
that
of
was-
course.
yeah, mercy killing, but still, it's like that sets the precedent off for the rest of the film. You're like, okay, then there's.
But come on, guys. The gunner in the helicopter that shoots himself with the flare, burns to death, and then provides the weapon of choice that
That's
she uses.
rifle, but you already took that one.
Yeah, that's just karma, Kevin. Come on.
And I will say for an off-screen off-screen death that we see later, Brian Cox, that was a great reveal. The first time I saw the movie, when he comes into frame, it was definitely like a huh.
She sees him drowned underneath,
water,
and then she remembers that he has a gun near his dick. So yeah. All right, guys, we have the Fall Guy Award for Best Action Stunt Scene. We've got some choices here in this. There's some good ones in this. I chose one of my favorites is, of course, through the fight scene through the train station, and as you mentioned earlier, Kyle, when they jump out of the window into the ice. There's some other ones as well. Get your favorite Fall Guy stunt scene, Lacey.
I still the one you're talking about when the guy shoots himself and falls in the thing, and then she cuts the chain and rides it up. Like that's a really good. And Craig Bierko is murdered and fallen and everything. I mean, it's
he died screaming like she promised.
He does die screaming. Yeah, that's
he dies on the actual landing on top of the truck that is the bomb that ends up exploding and destroying the bridge.
Yep.
What about you, Kyle?
I'm still going back to the train station, but everything on the bridge, Geena Davis needs to be given a Man Up award for, because at times during filming with wind chill, it was almost -98.
They filmed this movie in Canada during the wintertime. So yeah.
So yeah, Geena Davis, and considering what Geena Davis was wearing, yeah, she deserves a Man Up Fall Guy award just for that.
That's a good call. All right. The Star Wars Twin Sons favorite filming location or set piece here, guys. Now, I have one that wasn't in the film for reasons, but I did want to show it to you here because it's something interesting happened. So, on one of the movie's original locations was the historic Grand Hotel in Muskogee, Ontario, Canada, the 100-year-old Windermere House. During filming, however, the hotel caught fire and burned to the ground. The heat from the film lights were initially blamed for causing the blaze, but it was never proven that the lights started the fire. So I looked into this, guys, and I'm like, so basically this movie caused this 100-year-old hotel to burn down. I'm like, wow. Allegedly, but let's put it this way. If the film wasn't being filmed there, it might not have burned down. Maybe. Now, I found an article that came out years later. So the Windermere House, located on Lake Rousseau, on June 14th, the original Windermere House was destroyed in a fire in 1996, but it was rebuilt in 1997, and new ownership today continues to make improvements to the Muskogee property. So it has been rebuilt. And it's going under new management as I speak. Of course, I think this article was probably a few years ago, but I just thought, I wonder where would that have been, the farmhouse maybe, and they had to replace it, is what I'm guessing. They didn't say in the article of what this was going to be. I have to assume it was probably maybe where either the daughter was kidnapped and brought to, but something to think about anyway.
Oh, I'm thinking interiors. I'm thinking all of the like CIA, all the conversations in like the office buildings and stuff like that.
Possibly. Yeah. Of course, I've got the train station there too. Although no longer a working station, the Luna station is now rented out for events. You can find it in Hamilton, Ontario. And then, of course, when they go to New Jersey and they go to Atlantic City, They're actually not in Atlantic City. No, it's Toronto. You can go there. So they filmed that there. And of course, there's the cool bridge scene, climactic scene as well. But Lacey, what were some of your favorite filming locations or set pieces?
Okay. I love that treehouse so much.
Yeah.
I want a treehouse like that so bad. That's amazing. And the hotel, not hotel, the motel. Let's call it what it is. The motel that they're in. You're muted.
Was that the one they called like Deer Leak Hotel or something weird like that?
Deer Lick or I don't know.
Deer Lick or something. Yeah, the one that Samuel Jackson's character gets blown out when she blows
yes,
up.
The hotel. Well, no, not just that one, but the other hotel as well. The one where she has her transformation.
That's right. That's right. The one in Atlantic City. Yeah.
Right. So if you look at just the background, like there was so much detail in that, and it's such a, I don't know, skeevy is the only word that I can use that really feels right. And it's hard to find sets like that feel comfortable enough to film in, because when you're in the industry, if you go to somewhere that actually is like that, you don't want to touch anything. You don't want to sit anywhere, there's
right.
bugs and stuff. So creating something like that is a well done job. Yeah.
Kyle, what about you? What's your favorite filming location or set piece?
I love the train station. Lacey's right on about the treehouse. Truthfully, it's the town. It's that town. You get that Hallmark feel from that town, but it's so contrast to everything else in the film. But it feels so Americana, that
right
down home Christmas quaint town, and it was a perfect location for doing that, and it worked so well.
Christmas Town, USA.
It's funny you say that, because I don't remember who said it, but it's a quote. It's like, Canadians make the best Americans in films, and then like Canadian locations make the best American locations, because you save money filming up there, so there's a lot of US locations that they'll film in Canada. So I find that funny.
There's a lot of Alaskan locations that are actually Canada.
Yeah. Okay, here's a fun one we always like to do is, if you are a non-speaking extra on set, what scene would you want to be in? My first choice is the train scene, and that when mayhem breaks open there and the gunfire breaks out, that would be great to be in there. What about you guys? What would you choose, Lacey?
The parade.
Yeah, in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun to be on one of the floats, sitting there just sort of watching stuff go on, or riding a reindeer, whatever.
Right. Nice. Okay. What about you, Kyle?
I'd want to be one of the extras in the Christmas party at their house.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
I could snag a few Geena Davis Christmas cookies and just enjoy myself and watch everything that's going on.
I like that. Okay. All right. So because you're an extra, a non-speaking extra on the set, guys, I decided to add a new segment to this. As an extra, you're friends with the on-set prop master. They say you can take one thing home from the set. What prop are you taking, Kyle?
I'm taking the knife that she had in that suitcase.
Okay. Is that the one little curved one you're talking about?
Yeah, that is
the one that she's holding up in like the weird kind of flashback scene when she sees herself. Yeah.
Because otherwise it would be some of Samuel Jackson's outfits, but I just couldn't work them the same way.
I don't. If I couldn't wear it, I don't know if I'm taking it. So yeah. Lacey, what about you? What prop would you take home?
Can I just have David Morse?
No, he's not a prop, but I see where you're going with it. Lacey's got a crush on David Morse.
Oh my gosh, he's delightful. In Contact. Oh, anyway, I would say Samuel L. Jackson's hat is something that I would legitimately wear.
Yeah.
Because it's just awesome. That bucket hat that he has.
Yeah. Right. What's funny is some of the weapons are kind of cool, but I got to go with the weird shotgun Winchester thing with the grenade launcher that One-Eyed Jack had, because that is like one of the weirdest weapons I've ever seen in movie history. Right. I don't even know how that works, because you don't see it very well in the scene, but he uses it as a shotgun, and then you see the grenade launcher go off, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I'd probably take that. That
It
would be
kind
my
of
favorite.
reminded me a little bit of Aliens when she's taping the two guns together, like the
Yeah.
elevator.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
but there's still two separate weapons that
Yeah.
she puts together. It's not
Yeah.
like someone fabricated that weapon. So I thought that kind of funny. Okay, guys, I want to ask you if you have in the next segment here, if you have any Luke and Leia kiss cringeworthy moments, or do you have any pet peeves, Lacey?
I mean, the only real kind of cringeworthy moment is when she's hitting on him and Samuel Jackson, and he's like, "No, thanks, I'm good."
That is a little weird, yeah.
Because she kind of goes into it by talking about how like that's how they, would deflower virgins and all this whole thing. And it was just like, okay, so you start with the creep factor and then you move on to the skis. Okay.
What about you, Kyle? Oh, sorry, Lacey, did you have another one?
No, that was it.
Okay.
For cringe factor, I kind of gotta agree with Lacey that scene feels so out of place, but it works so well because Sam Jackson puts her in her place with it. But
Right.
it just seems too out of place with those characters because we've seen them as friends for too long and really with not a sexual chemistry, and then all of a sudden this, and it just feels like, yeah, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, though, at the beginning of the film, when she's in the car talking about how, he's like, what do you get out of that when he catcalls the woman on the street that's jogging, and she, as Samantha, he says, don't worry, you've got her beat, like, talks about how, her boobs are so big that, he can see them coming from around the corner and have time to air and all that kind of stuff.
I thought that was so funny being
yeah, right. You have time to comb your hair. But I think that if it had been Samantha who had hit on him, he would have. I think that he's very clearly rejecting Charlie, not Samantha. And I think that just shows the emotional maturity of his character being like, he has an attraction to this woman when she has one of the personalities. The other personality is just not his thing. And he is very, very quick to say, like, no, thanks, I'm good. And I love that because you don't get that in a lot of, especially characters that are referenced like he is. Like he starts out, he's being, labeled as kind of like the not so great guy.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have just a small pet peeve. It's not a big deal. It's One-Eyed Jack. So you see him in the beginning in prison, and he's watching the news, and he sees her in the parade, and he's obviously surprised that she's alive. Okay, and he gets so irate. Then all of a sudden, he just escapes. I wish they would have kind of explained it a little bit, like either maybe someone let him loose, but it takes. What we're supposed to take as viewers is that he could have escaped any time, but it takes him being angry that this girl who took his eye out, he's so angry, then he's going to escape prison. I just kind of wanted a little connection there to kind of, little pet peeve.
I don't know. That didn't bother me. I feel like with the flashback that you get where she remembers being, in the trunk of the car and him, and then like, I feel like there's a very visceral memory there for him.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, couldn't have broken out earlier and done other stuff. And then, fine.
Sometimes though, when you're part of a syndicate, when you go to do your time, you do your time, they're taken care of in prison. He's probably, pretty high on the list. He's not like, getting attacked in the shower. You know what I mean? Like he's probably got it, because if you see the scene he was in, he had, like a lazy boy. He was sitting there and he stands up and kind of comes up to the thing. But the room he was in is a big room. It's not like an 8x8 cell or a 6x6 cell. So maybe he had it a little bit posh, and that just ticked him off to the point where he was like, because Craig Bierko's character.
I was going over it in my head. And I'm just like, I just needed something more. Like it would have been better because of the people that he's connected to. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I wish they would have at least set up his escape. Just do that. Take like 10 seconds and show, because obviously there's a connection, and that's my only issue. Maybe there was something and it was edited out. I don't know, but I just wanted something more than him just like all of a sudden, in passing, you find out that he's escaped. So all right, here's a newer segment, guys. This one's fun here. New category: the Vanilla Ice Cool as Ice 1991 award to the most dated thing or person in this movie. And I'm going to start off with some minor things here before I get to my big one here. First of all, Mitch's pager, it's dated. It's 90s. Pagers was a thing. When she becomes Charlie again, she instantly becomes a chain smoker, along with Mitch and his Newports. There was a lot of chain smoking in the 90s, by the way. And there's just a lot, especially if you watch a lot of current stuff. It seemed like even more than the 80s. And when you watch like what is it, Reality Bites, everyone's smoking. So she just becomes a chain smoker, which is very dated at the time. Craig Bierko, who plays Timothy, the main villain, his cell phone, and in his reference to Baywatch Nights, which I thought was kind of funny.
That was good.
There was reference to the 93 World Trade Center bombing, which is dated there. And of course, Mitch being interviewed on Larry King, I felt that was like an 80s, 90s thing, and then kind of started to peter out a little bit. It was like if you were famous for whatever reason, you would go on the Larry King show. But my biggest one that is completely dated here is Craig Bierko himself. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. I felt like he was a 90s thing, and then boom, done. And I'm trying to look at his IMDb here, and you know how when you bring up an actor, there's usually 4 movie projects that they're known for that comes up. One is The 13th Floor, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Cinderella Man, and Scary Movie 4. And I'm looking at his IMDb here. It seems like they tried to make a thing out of him in the 90s. And I'm looking at his stuff here, and I'm like, he's not really in a lot of stuff here. He does a lot of episodic television. He was in Young and the Restless, Bob Newhart series. But he just didn't. He was in 2 episodes of Sex and the City in 2001. He was in uncredited role in Kate and Leopold. But it just seems like they were trying to make him something in the 90s, and this might have been his biggest role. To me, he's dated. What do you guys think?
I would say her makeup when she becomes Charlie. Like, that is a very 90s look with the.
You're talking about like the blacked out eyes and that type of thing.
Not just that, but like the blacked out eyes, and then, but in addition to that, the pale lip, the lip color. That was a very, very 90s thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Kyle, what about you? What's dated? Who's dated? Who gets?
You stole my biggest one with the Baywatch Nights reference. But
did that last like one season? I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that. It added Donna Bierko to Baywatch. That's what I remember. But the cell phone they're using, too, that big black brick cell phone. But to answer your question, Kevin, this was kind of, I think, especially in the 90s, was very much a phenomenon that hit a lot of industries. People with a certain look, and because there was a lot of guys that looked like him with the beard and
he's a good looking guy.
Yeah, he's a good, but there was a lot of guys who looked like, it's almost like, I want to call it like the early Ben Affleck look,
Okay.
And so the people were looking for a lot of guys that look like Ben Affleck. It happened in comics too, when you had the big boom with certain artists, everybody was trying to copy their style instead of doing their thing. When you had like the whole Image Comics thing boom happen in the 90s and things like that. It's very much, I think, a product of the 90s of, this guy has that particular look. We're going to try to push him, even though he might not catch on. Right. I think that's what happened with him.
Good point. All right, next segment, guys, is the Titanic I'm King of the World career moment. Was an actor in this movie or someone else at the top of their career, or was anything else in this movie trending, newsworthy, tabloid popular when this movie is released? And I'm going to give my vote to, and we talked about it earlier here, is Mr. Shane Black. As we mentioned, he broke the record for the most expensive screenplay, got paid $4 million for this. And we all may remember Shane Black from being in a little movie called Predator. He was Hawkins. Hawkins, unfortunately, got killed well, by the way. But then he becomes one of the most famous screenwriters and directors in his own right. So I'm giving my vote to Shane Black. And just to kind of give you an idea here, screenplay for Last Action Hero, written Predator as well, Lethal Weapon, Nice Guys, Iron Man 3, Kiss Kiss, Bang Bang, Lethal Weapon 4, and Last Boy Scout. Monster Squad, also written by him. There you go. Shane Black gets my vote. What about you guys? You guys got someone that has a King of the World moment?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the reasons why, one of the things with this movie, it's not a King of the World moment for anybody in particular. And I think it's one of those things that again, we talked about this earlier with this movie. Everything's in it is good, but there's nobody who's at the absolute apex of their powers in this movie. Yes, even though Shane Black got the big money payment, he was so much more famous for other things he's done before and after than this particular film.
Yeah, but this is the script that set movie history. $4 million for this script. No one ever got that before, So you could say he's at the top, but so you're saying this movie's kind of balanced, not everyone,
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody who's just at that apex king of the world moment.
Gotcha. Lacey, does anyone have a king of the world moment for you at this time?
I think that the tabloid stuff wasn't there was a lot of stuff in the tabloids at that point about the fact that Renny Harlin and Geena Davis were
actual tabloids,
married, not married.
Yeah.
I don't remember. There was
because wasn't she married to Jeff Goldblum prior?
I don't
or involved with him or something?
No.
Involved with him, but not married to him.
Yeah, because of The Fly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and then Transylvania 65000, they were in together, So but yeah, I think there were actual tabloid things happening during this when it talking about whether or not he should have cast her, whether or not she, whatever.
She did actually marry Jeff Goldblum. They were married on November 1st, 1987.
There you go. Yeah. Okay.
It was a very short marriage, maybe barely a year.
Okay. But yeah, I think you're onto something there. There was definitely tabloid news. It was a big deal that they were husband and wife, coming off, of course, Cutthroat Island, which also was a big cannon fodder as well for tabloids. And then they're going and doing this film. Good call. Kyle, I think you alluded to this for our next segment here, is the Aliens Nuke It from Orbit hot take. I think you have a hot take. What is it?
I have a very hot take, because my hot take is if this movie is either made 5 years prior or 15 years later, this movie is a huge success. And
explain.
Here's why. If it's made 5 years prior, we are riding the high of Linda Hamilton with female action empowerment. And I think this movie gets on that wave and carries a lot better. If it is made 15 years later, this is a Charlize Theron film. Charlize Theron is in the Geena Davis role. You can still have Sam Jackson in this movie as that character, but it is Charlize Theron in this role. She's coming off right around Mad Max, a few other things. I mean, even look at Geena Davis and how she looks when she turns her hair blonde. She looks a little like Charlize Theron with that hairstyle. This is a Charlize Theron at the top of her powers film, and this film does bank.
You know what? Lacey, remind me, because I think Kyle's onto something here, because I feel like the 90s, and maybe early 2000s, we have a dry spell of female action heroes. What do you think?
Angelina Jolie.
Tomb Raider?
We had Tomb Raider. She had...
Who else did we have other than her?
Oh, gosh. Off the top of my head.
She was rising in her star in her own right, and those like video game was getting huge. So you have a good point. She's there, obviously, but who else are we having until later? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you think
about Tomb Raider wasn't until 2001.
Right. Yeah.
So 90s, we still have a dry spell after, because we have two action movies, Cutthroat Island and this one's both starring Geena Davis. And then what do we have after that?
I kind of feel like the 90s was the bitch, not the badass. 90s, you had Sigourney Weaver, in Melanie Griffith, Harrison Ford,
Working Girl
with that was 80s. That was
in the 80s.
I think that the late 80s and early 90s has a lot of like the working women, the powerful women, not necessarily the badass women.
So we have Linda Hamilton and Geena Davis
and Sigourney Weaver in 79 and 84.
No, I'm talking about in the 90s. That's what I'm talking about.
I know, that's what I'm saying is that you had Sigourney Weaver and then a little break, and then you had Linda Hamilton and then a little break, then you have Geena Davis, and then you wait another 15 years before you, or 12, 5 years.
Hence to Kyle's point.
Action films.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I just say I think this is a Charlize Theron takes this movie 15 years later, and this movie just becomes huge.
Yeah, if it's made earlier, yeah, definitely, and if it's made later, yeah, that's a good point here, Carl.
When did Renee Russo do she was a cop. When did she do
Lethal Weapon 3, 4?
Was it Thomas Crown? No. Was it Thomas Crown?
She wasn't a cop, but she was the insurance investigator. Yeah, I think that came. I think Kyle, if you can look for me, I'm going to say early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So you had a lot in the 90s. We had
99.
99. Okay.
Julia Roberts and Sandra Bullock doing like investigative-y type things.
Yeah, not serious action.
Not action.
I think outside of Geena Davis, there was a lack of female action stars throughout the 90s.
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah, definitely. So okay, cool. All right, guys, let's talk about what happens next. The next day, we combine this, of course, with the sequels, prequels, and discussion here. And I bring that up because, so I got this from Wiki, but then I also have an article here. So the last page of Black's original 1994 script stated that there would have been a sequel called The Kiss After Lightning. That never happened. With a possible sequel was reportedly in the works in 2007. No sequel, though, has been produced as of 2024. And Samuel L. Jackson in a MovieWeb.com article last year, so it's a recent article published in July 24th, 2023 by Sherry Hirsch. During a recent interview with Vulture to chat about his long-running career in the entertainment industry, star Samuel Jackson discussed his 1996 film, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and revealed that he wouldn't mind coming back for a follow-up to this action movie. Keep in mind, this was last year that this interview happened. The Long Kiss Goodnight stars, of course, Geena Davis as Samantha Kane, a.k.a. Charlie, and Samuel Jackson as Mitch Hennessy. The film follows Samantha, a suburban mom with amnesia who hires a private detective, played by Jackson, to look into her past. As Samantha experiences unexpected memories and skills, she eventually learns that she was previously a government assassin. During his interview with the outlet, Jackson talked about his work with filmmaker Renny Harlin on a 1990 horror movie, Deep Blue Sea, in which the actor played Russell Franklin, a character who quickly ends up getting devoured by DNA-altered sharks. The Pulp Fiction star then reflected on his work in the Finnish director's mystery film and revealed how he ended up getting the part of Mitch in The Long Kiss Goodnight. Jackson told the outlet that I read Long Kiss and I kept asking my people to get me in to read for this role, but the studio was like, nah, man, what the F? They wouldn't see me. And, we heard that he eventually sees Renny in a party and ends up getting cast. But he talks about this sequel that this is one of his favorite characters, one of his favorite roles, and he would love to have seen a sequel. So I ask you guys, what would you have liked to have seen from a sequel? Now, keep in mind, things would have been different if it came out in 2007, as originally mentioned here, when they were working on it. We could have brought back the same cast members, an older daughter, maybe, who knows? Could you still do it now with all this time passed? Lacey, what would you have liked to have seen from a sequel and when?
I mean, if we want to go completely off the rails, we could turn her boyfriend in the beginning of it into a sleeper agent that's put there on purpose to like keep track of her.
I like where you're going.
And like completely blow up, like, because she's going back to the family life, right? So at the end of this movie, she's got the child and she's going back to the happy, fun thing. And then to find out maybe 7, 8, 5, 6, 7 years later that he's actually an agent of some sort, and he's been put there to make sure that she didn't resurface or, monitor her so that, whatever. That could be fun. I know that, because every time you see one of these, if there's a kid, you always think like, let's wait 15 years and then the kid's going to be a badass like her mom or whatever, which could be cool. But,
we should have gotten that with The Professional and Natalie Portman.
We should have gotten that with True Lies. I mean, come on, man. Elisa Dushku, that would have been amazing.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think that maybe putting someone in that who is in her life in a benign way flips and see what happens with that.
Okay. Kyle, what do you think? What do you want to see in a sequel, if any?
I think it's probably 5 or 6 years later. The daughter gets kidnapped. Somebody who has a beef against her kidnaps, finds out she's alive again, all this stuff, kidnaps the daughter. She recruits Hennessy for his PI skills to help find the daughter, and because that's about the only person she trusts and under these circumstances, and it's them to go rescue the kidnapped daughter, and maybe we get to see a little bit of badassery from the kidnapped daughter because she is a little bit older, probably has a little bit more of an attitude from how her mom has probably raised her, now that she's kind of an amalgamation of everything. But I think that's the direction you go. Or, in my opinion, too, what they could have easily done, and I think if this is the modern day thing, Hennessy gets his own show, whether it's a streaming show or a movie or something. They do more with the Hennessy character.
I like where you're going with the kidnapping. I mean, kind of like a female commando, where Geena Davis takes on the Schwarzenegger role.
Yeah,
so that'd be fun to watch.
It's interesting. You guys I wasn't sure where I was going to go with a sequel to this, but you kind of both planted things in my brain here. Especially with Hennessy getting his own thing. But I still want to see a movie where they're all in it together. But I thought it'd be kind of cool where Hennessy is now become he's like one of the top detectives, and not saying he reconciles with his ex-wife or something, but whatever. But I could see the daughter growing up and maybe becoming like a junior detective, and then he uncovers something, and Charlie, maybe has to come out of her retirement and to help rescue them and the kid or something. Lacey?
Oh, okay. So, sorry, I didn't mean it.
No, go for it. Say your brain. This is what we do. This is what we do.
Forget that Samuel L. Jackson has a son who's about the same age. What if his kid ends up in trouble somehow or kidnapped or whatever, and he goes to Charlie and he's like, "Look, I know you're retired, but this is my kid. I helped you. I need you to help me get my kid back." Like that takes the daughter out of it maybe, and then gives us a different way to go, because we don't know if it might be his old partner getting what, who knows. It could there's a nice little bit of information that we get that we could expand on, still have a film, but have Samuel L. Jackson kind of pulling the strings on it.
That's another question I would love to ask Shane Black. I'm sure everyone would want to talk about his Lethal Weapons and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I need to know what you were going to do with Long Kiss Goodnight sequel, bruh. Come on. What would have been?
Nice.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and close things out here. Let's get your final thoughts on Long Kiss Goodnight. Lacey, I want you to go first. This was your choice for Christmas movie. Excellent choice, by the way. Your thoughts?
I love this movie. And I think it holds up, with the exception of children playing with fire and weird dolls holding gasoline. I think that it's fun. It's brutal, and that's something you don't get often, especially in that time period with a female lead. And I keep going back to that the fight where Bierko is telling her that he's gonna blind her daughter and shoot her in the kneecaps, and then straight up closed fist punches her to knock her out. Like, that is
okay. Hold on. I need to ask you about a scene then. Okay. We didn't really touch on this, and as on my rewatch. Okay. So I know we're kind of backtracking here, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on this scene. When Charlie says, "Look in her eyes, she's your daughter."
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of feel like for a second, he looks in his eye, looks in her eye, the kid's eyes,
mm-hmm.
and you feel like something kind of turns there. But then no, as you've said this whole podcast, he's a horrible person. He's a bad guy for a reason. Nothing clicks in him.
No, I think he noted. I think he saw it because he didn't believe her. He thought she was just pulling his leg. Then he looks in her eyes and he's like, and he makes the acknowledgement that, like, wow, she does have my eyes. And then he's just basically like, well, gonna have to deal with that. I mean, it's not like, oh, I need to take the baby and go and have a lovely life, whatever. He doesn't care. And he's like a straight up sociopath. I mean, the man was going to blow up 4,000 people just so that the CIA could get more money.
Yeah.
It's the whole conspiracy theory about the CIA doing things on American soil so that they can pose a potential threat so that the government gives them more money.
It was just a weird moment where like you think maybe he
Yeah.
might make a turn and show some humanity, and this little girl looking up into him, obviously being the father, and like no. Before you finish out with your final thoughts, Kyle, did you have a comment on that particular scene?
I think it just
I
shows
want-
how much of a psychopath he is.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think he does acknowledge it. It's like, yeah, well, who knows how? He's probably thinking, who knows how many illegitimate kids I have around the world.
Mhm.
Lacey, go ahead, and sorry to interrupt you, but I just had to talk
No.
about that scene. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing, I think that a movie hero is only as good as their villain is bad, and I think he's a really good villain. I think he's really like just a dastardly real person, and that's the thing, because people out there like him exist, so it's not out of the bounds of possibility that something like this would happen, and that's what makes him such a good bad guy.
Yeah.
And I think that elevated her, good guy / anti-hero. So she's a hero and an anti-hero and then a hero again in one movie. And that's significant. I mean, she plays so many different roles in this.
Yeah.
I know there's only 2 personalities, but I mean, it's got levels, man. It's like a good
True.
hand.
Yeah. Kyle, your final thoughts on The Long Kiss Goodnight, sir?
A solid action film that definitely could easily go into your Christmas rotation with it being set at Christmas. It's an amazing performance by Samuel Jackson. In my opinion, probably one of his top 10 performances. Geena Davis is at the top of her game in this. And I think this is a movie about a lot of what ifs and what could have been. And it, again, because of, I think, timing of when it came out and certain other aspects, it's gotten a little lost in the fandom oblivion just a bit, but has enough to it to keep that cult status as well. So I think this is one of those movies that I think a lot of people who of our age or even a little younger need to revisit and take a different look at it and different approach and enjoy a couple of amazing performances in it.
That's a good call. Yeah, I was first of all really excited, Lacey, that you chose this one as not only your Christmas movie but just a good couch potato theater cover. And I feel like it's got a cult status. I think it falls under cult status, honestly. And then the occasional I see people bring it up every now and then. Kyle, our friend Anthony DeLongis of the show, of course, Highlander television alumni and He-Man alumni, as well as a special guest on our Couch Potato Theater for Roadhouse, who he co-starred as one of the villains. His wife also said Long Kiss Goodnight is a Christmas movie. So it's out there. It's a thing. And Geena Davis's greatness, I am disappointed that nothing became of it. I would have loved to have seen her come back as this character. I just want to see Geena Davis more in other things. I would have loved to have seen her in maybe some more rom-coms or something just to get that. But as you had mentioned, Lacey, she had kids and that kind of took her in a different direction. But I love Geena Davis in this, and she looked great as well. She kicked ass. And I just think I love it when you put 2 characters together, 2 actors together that you normally wouldn't think would work in a film. Samuel Jackson and Geena Davis. If you would have told me that before, I'm like, really? I love them both, but really? Because you don't know if there's going to be any like sexual chemistry between them or whatever. So you don't quite know. But as 2 characters working together in a film, perfect. Absolutely loved it. So yeah, Kyle.
To your point on that too, it happens again almost 25 years later with Sam Jackson and Brie Larson.
Yeah. And which movie is that, Kyle?
Captain Marvel.
There you go. Captain Marvel. Well said. Yeah. All right, guys, let's go ahead and close things out. This is the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, you are watching and listening to Couch Potato Theater, Long Kiss Goodnight. We are also on Blue Sky, by the way. Make sure you check us out at Fan Pod Network on Blue Sky. The Fandom Podcast Network is, of course, on the YouTube as well. If you're listening to this, check out the video. Please give us a subscribe and a shout out there. Master feed for all of our audio podcasts or fpnet.podbean.com. Couch Potato Theater has its own feed on there as well. Fandom Podcast Network, of course, is on all of your podcast catchers. Facebook as well. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. We're also, Fandom Podcast Network is also on Instagram and X, along with, of course, more recently, Blue Sky. Lacey, how can we get a hold of you?
I am Lacey Pants in all of the places except for Instagram, where I am the Lacey Pants.
The Lacey Pants.
Yes. And don't forget Discord and Letterboxd.
That's right. Yep. Kyle.
Well, in the accordance of the holiday season, I just want to say how important it is for me when I'm on these podcasts to be earnest and frank with everybody. And you can find me as Ernest in Chicago. You can find me as Frank in New York, and I'm Kyle in Florida. And you can find me on social media on Twitter and Blue Sky at @KyleW, or you can find me on Instagram and Threads at @KyleFandom.
Kyle, you're getting the golf clap because that was a funny scene at the end there with Mitch and, of course, Larry King. Well said. I don't think the joke went over well in front of Larry King, but it went very well here at the Fandom Podcast Network, Potato Theater. So well done. My name is Kevin. You can find me on X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd at @Spartan_Phoenix, and on Blue Sky, this big thing right here, Blue Sky, at Spartan Phoenix. And so make sure you guys check us out. We appreciate you guys on this holiday journey here. Lacey, thanks again so much for your pick. Wonderful pick.
Yay!
And we're not going to say what it is right now, but it was mentioned in this podcast. Lacey also picked our Valentine's Day movie coming in 2020.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to save that for later. But anyway, thank you again for joining us here on the Fandom Podcast Network for our presentation of Couch Potato Theater, Long Kiss Goodnight, 1996. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Lacey. And until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.
Merry